Vito wanted for his boys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to succeed, be a doctor, be a senator, or whatever the case may be, just so he has to be a proud father, to be something like that. But I think the marriage plot really is interesting in itself, and how it got distanced, and how again she's left out of everything because Michael won't tell her. Mm. You know, Michael's keeping it within himself because, again, my headcanon says if she knows something, that's an outlet to get to Michael. Mm-hmm. So, but she's not understanding that because probably she thinks communication is key, and why aren't you talking to me? But then she realizes what's going on because Michael's not giving her the truth. So maybe she sits there and, you know, the baby's lost because she doesn't want she doesn't want a child to be born into this life.
Mm-hmm. See, I interpret it that he's just so obsessed with what his father had that he's just trying to mimic what his father had. He's like, my father had it good. It was all about family. So if I have more family, I'll have what my father had. So that's what I think it is. He's like, you know, his father had a daughter and 3 sons, right? So that's what he's wanting, is a daughter and 3 sons. You know, like he talks to his mom about family and how he thinks he's losing his family. And his mom's like, no, you'll never lose your family, right? But he does lose his family. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just his obsession with living up to his father's name and trying to become his father. And that's why he's so obsessed with having another boy.
And in addition to your point too, Brandon, it's time has passed since the first one, including when he was born. So times are different. Mm-hmm. So you have to adapt to the time. And I don't think Michael realizes that, you know, things can't be just that simple. You have to adapt to change, and you have to go with how you go with. And I don't think he was ready to do that. Mm-hmm. I think he just wanted it a certain way, and to keep it that way. But you have to adapt with time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think to me, like the most of all the things, of all the scenes of intensity in this film, to me, like the most effective. I mean, you say favorite at these things, and it's you don't want to label favorite for horrible things like this. But the last scene between Kay and Michael, right, where she's telling him, "I had an abortion, Michael. It's something horrible and unholy, just like this marriage." Like it's like, whoa, like all this baggage that has been building up for 2 movies with her, it's just all coming out now. Because even during all these hearings and stuff, she's with them, and she probably figures they're gonna get him. But even at the end, she's like, "Well, I should have known that you're too smart to let him get to you, Michael. But I'm taking the kids and I'm leaving." And again, it's him. He just wants to control everything. Wants to have this family, and she is like taking the kids, and he's like, "You're not gonna take my kids." And then the way the camera moves when he hits her, like it just pans to the left real tight, like that. Just that motion of the camera, like you're carried along with the motion. It just feels so like, whoa, man, you have totally crossed the line now. Like of all the horrible things you've done, hitting your wife like in the face like that, like that's the worst thing you've done. But then she's had an abortion. She feels terrible about it. But the sins of this family have kind of like even sucked her in because she doesn't even want to bring another, as she says, like she doesn't want to bring another child into this crazy family because she's seen what it does. And announced to her that Michael's going to kill his brother here in a minute. So she's her suspicions prove correct here.
Mm-hmm. And I think the exile of Kay as well was very powerful, you know, afterwards, where, you know, Connie goes and says, "Well, Kay's here, and I don't want to see you, you know, go." He doesn't want to see you. He doesn't want to see you. Well,
yeah, hurry up. He's coming home. Go.
Gotta get out. And she's like, "I don't care. It's my kids. I'm the mother." And I said, "No, Michael doesn't want to see you. Go." And it gets to that violent point. I think that's where Michael's breaking point was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you want him to just say, like, when his son won't hug the mom, you want him to just say, "Okay, give your mom a kiss and a hug," but he just walks up slowly and closes the door in her face again.
Yeah, again, yeah. Just see, in the first movie, it was like the organization of the crime, like closing the door on her, but now it's like Michael literally slamming the door in her face. It's like, damn, like it's tragic. And these movies, they are like the tragedy of Michael Corleone, right? I mean, like he became like he didn't like what his family did and like what his father, he might have, he loved his father, but he hated what his father like represented. But now he's become that, but like even like way worse, and lost his family, and ultimately at the end he's just a lonely old man at the end with nothing to show for it. It's like, what was all this for, right?
Yeah, it's almost her decision killed his family wishes.
Okay, well, is there anything else we want to talk about the film before we get into our final ratings and whatnot, Chris?
Yeah, aside from the main actors in the movie, I'd like to get your opinion on who you think your favorite sub-character would be, whether it be Pentangeli, be Hyman Roth, Johnny Ola, or things of that nature.
I would say Pentangeli, especially for our character who wasn't in the first one, who is a replacement for Clemenza. He really he brings a lot of energy to it. Like he's so like he has so much like life to him. He's a dynamic kind of guy, charismatic guy, I should say. And then when it turns out like there's a hit on him, but you kind of like you're like, did they kill him? Did they not have? They leave it vague enough so when he comes back at the end, you're like, oh, they didn't get him. All right. And then at the end of the movie, right when he's like. He's gonna flip, because he thought Michael tried to kill him, and then they bring in his brother, and he's like, you see the complete 180 shift. He's like, oh, I don't know nothing about no Godfather. No, I know we did oil business together. I don't know what you're talking about. And I love that in movies where they're like, where somebody does something like that, like they flip, and then they're like, we here have a signed affidavit. Like it's like some absolute truth. It doesn't mean anything, But anyway, he would be being a new character, and the kind of energy he injected into it. I liked him as my favorite, I guess, as you said, secondary character.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Zach. He's my favorite in the film. I love his voice. Like, he's got this raspy voice, Like, that's what's so good about it. And the way that he's talking at the end, he's like, sure. Yeah. They said, Michael, do this. So I'm like, sure, whatever. And I signed the paper, and I don't know, like, just the way that he acts, especially in that scene, is really good. I don't know.
I'm going to complete the trifecta here, and I'm going to agree. Frank Pentangeli was one of the best characters, or secondary characters in that movie. I mean, from the scene of the birth of the communion to the sit down that he has with Michael, and how he was given the family by Clemenza, and the Rosado brothers, of course, were doing wrong. They weren't following the family rules. And how he explains, I want him dead. That's not how, Michael says, that's not how we work. That's not going to happen. And the whole scene with the courtroom and stuff like that. But he had to have been one of my favorite one-off characters.
Well, just so I understand what happened here, because it is a little confusing, intentionally so, I think, by the movie. So, like, Roth is the one that put the hit out on Frankie. Is that correct? And they framed Michael for that?
I thought it was Michael that put the hit on Frankie.
I thought that too, but then I felt like it was.
I think Roth was the one who put the hit out because Roth wanted control.
Roth wanted to frame Michael to turn the families against each other. So then because they're the ones that had been talking to Fredo, right, who put the hit on Michael. Yeah. And that doesn't work, So Michael goes to all these characters and he says, "Oh, well, I know so and so did it, and I know so and so did it, I know so and so did it," because he's just trying to figure out what happened. So that's the other great thing. Like Frankie, he flips on Michael because he thought Michael tried to kill him, and well, that wasn't the case. And then Fredo's whole role in it, he felt like passed over. I mean, he even it's really tragic. Like he's like, "Hey, Fredo, it's you and me, man. We're gonna have some fun together." And he's like, "Why did we ever do this before?" You kind of like even before he's the one. But I think it's so great when, and obviously I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. That's like an iconic scene, right, for the New Year. Like it's New Year's and all that. But the scene before that, when he's acting, oh, have you met so and so before? No, never met him. Hello, nice to meet you. And then of course Fredo, being dumb, being absent-minded, they're at that party later, that bar or whatever. And you're like, "Hey, Fredo, how'd you find out about this place?" Like, "Oh, well, so-and-so told me. Yeah, he knows all the best things." And that's when Michael realizes, he's like, he puts his head in his hands, like, "Oh, my God, it was Fredo." Just that's just that realization is, like, so powerful, I think. And that's what carries the last part of this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zach, you bring up a good point. Fredo was passed over, as he even says that to Michael. He says,
yeah, it's a great
I
scene.
should have been the one to take over. It should have been me, but they chose you. And like you said earlier, Michael knew he wasn't the right choice because he was a little, as we say in Italian, ubats. But it's it's interesting how Fredo gets turned.
Right.
And how
well, yeah, that last scene there between the two of them is like finally Fredo's back up for himself. Like, people think I'm dumb, people think I'm smart. He has those insecurities, and that's what led him to do these terrible things. I don't know. Like, I don't know if he really thought they were going to kill Michael or not. I mean, when you open the blinds, right? I mean, the only reason Michael didn't get shot is Kay was like, "Why are the blinds open?" And that gives him just enough time to kind of like be mindful of his surroundings and hit the deck. I mean, like, he had to have known that was a hit. On Michael, so they're all so much tragedy here, and all these characters, and it's like the great American dream that comes into the great American tragedy, and that is why The Godfather, both of these films are just still heralded these great classics, because there's so many layers to all this stuff with all these characters and motivations, and even though people are doing stuff that criminal activity, morally questionable activity at the very least, right? You still relate to these people, you feel bad for them. And because they're just people making decisions in their best interest at the time, and you see where it all turns out.
Mm-hmm. Absolute power corrupts, and
there it is. Yeah,
that's basically the whole thing behind it. It's absolute power corrupts. Is when you want that power, there's corruption at the bottom, and it brings up through the ranks.
Mm-hmm. Yep, these are all classics, all three of them, right, Zach?
Nope. Not right, Brandon. So this is talk about when I was talking about in our first episode about like movies that need to leave well enough alone, where they should have left well enough alone. Well, we'll get to that next time.
I'm afraid about next week, because I'm gonna have to probably be forced to say something nice. Oh, that's what we should actually title next week's episode.
You guys are gonna go back in this film and you'd be like, "Man, this is great. Why do people say this movie's no good?" You're gonna change your minds, I promise you.
I'll give you an actress's name next week.
Yes. Nepotism.
You mean the amazing director, Sofia Coppola?
Hey, she's an amazing director, but she's not an amazing actress. We'll talk about that later.
Zach actually put it the same way I'm going to put it. Some people, those that can't act, direct. That's basically it.
Awesome. Zach, you going to give us some little trivias now on how many counts for this film? How many...
That's right. We had one offer that cannot be refused. It's when Vito has his one line in English. She's like, "I'm giving an offer I can't refuse."
Yeah.
So that brings us to 1 for this movie and 5 overall for the franchise. So I'm curious to see what our final tally will be, because I don't know Godfather 3 like I do 1 and 2. So I have no idea how many offers are going to be not be able to be refused next time.
Yes. Well, we'll find out, absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to checking it out. But, let's give our final ratings on this. Chris, what would you rate The Godfather Part 2? Out of how many cannolis would you give this?
Again, I would give it a 6 out of 5.
6 out of 5 cannolis.
I would. Half a dozen. And that would make a dozen total for Chris's counts. Chris's cannoli counts for the 2 movies would be a dozen.
Well, I'm just worried then that you'll make it, with The Godfather 3, you'll make it a baker's dozen.
Yeah, that'll probably, or I'll just eat half of one and we'll just leave it at half. But I think what makes this movie iconic, much like the last one, goes back to cinematography, goes back to the score, the added layer of the actors and the writing make this movie just as iconic as the first one.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, so I definitely have to give this a 5 out of 5 cannolis again. I think the movie's great. I think it's wonderful. I prefer the stuff with young Vito, but the stuff with Michael is really good as well. Like it's an interesting balance between the two of them, and it's an interesting way to tell the story, to continue the family line, but to also tell the beginning of the family and how they originally rose to power. I think it's a very worthy successor to the first one. I think it's a wonderful Best Picture winner, and I think it's a heck of a lot of fun. And 3.5 hours goes by pretty quick.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 cannolis. Like, it's The Godfather, one of the greatest films of all time. It's followed up by one of the greatest films of all time, The Godfather Part 2, and it's very appropriate they call it Part 2 because it really feels like Part 2.
Yeah, it's
like it feels like a natural extension, right? Yeah, it doesn't feel like you wait. Like even if you take the prequel stuff out, which is like you, Brandon. Like I wanted to see more of that, but if you remove all that, this is still a natural continuation of the first film, and it's told in the same style. It just, and because they were made so closely together, I think that helps as well.
Mm-hmm.